Alright, this could be our second notes, and this is going to be on the explorers that were scientists. So you can see here these words profit and knowledge. So originally the Age of Discovery, when we were looking at those that explored the ocean, it was mainly for profit and establishing trade routes and conquering lands and colonizing. And in this time frame, when these new thinking came along and these captains were doing their exploration, there was still some of that. People were still colonizing, they were still looking for trade routes, but also at the same time they realized the importance of getting data as well. So this was like this describe what they were seeing, and that can include map making and such, and taking ocean depths, and like for instance when they Cook actually came to Alaska, they would measure the depth of the ocean as they approached the shore, and they could make maps that could tell captains, where they were and whether they were going to go aground. And a lot of these captains did that, and just were great map makers. And this first guy here, James Cook, and we've heard of him, he was a great cartographer. He made great maps and was really responsible for mapping much of Alaska, even a lot of the coast there. And so James Cook is the first one we're going to look at, and he was responsible. His first scientific thing that he was sent out for, it was kind of like veiled. They wanted people to think it was more scientific, but in reality it was actually militarily motivated. And the eclipse of Venus is what they sent him out for, and there was going to be a special eclipse of Venus that could only be viewed in a certain hemisphere, and so they sent him out to look at it. And but at the same time, they wanted him to find the southern continent, which, as we know, is there. They thought it was there, and this is Antarctica. They were looking for like another naval base to establish, and so they could control parts of the ocean. And I'm going to show you a map of where he went here. Let me see if I can go to it here. Right here. Let's move this over a little bit. Okay. I'll come down maybe. Okay. Actually, have to go back to his map. Okay. We'll just leave it like this. But you can see this is where he's coming out of Europe and Whitby. And it shows these different voyages, 1768 to 1771, 1772 to 75, and then 76 to 79. And you can see where he went. He went down to South America and around, and the Cape Horn, and ended up in the Pacific Ocean. So his exploration was really was one of the first people to really go into the Pacific Ocean, and he had circumnavigated the globe. If we were looking at the map here, we could see, he went this way, then came out over on this side. So he was someone that was really exploring the Pacific Ocean, and making maps of places they had never even seen before. So Pacific Ocean, let me change that boldness and all that. Gotta get this to change, Okay, so the Pacific Ocean, when we look back at the map here, we can see the one thing that he really helped with is Australia, New Zealand, helped really explore these places, and was really looking to get down here. And he got really close. You can kind of see some of these. He didn't quite make it to land. He was really close. Didn't realize how close he was, and didn't quite make it to Antarctica. But you can also see he also looked for something called the Northwest Passage that we had talked about here, where over top of North America you could go right over top the continent instead of having to go all the way down through South America. Or if you'd gone this way, you could go up on the eastern side of North America and then go over top and then down. You can see he got really close. He went through this little opening here, but then came back, did a lot of exploration along Alaska. That's why his name is so prevalent here. So, as we know, So he did Alaska, right? Mapping of Alaska. And also Hawaii. And eventually he was killed in Hawaii. That's kind of James Cook. Big in mapping. He was involved in not only scientific endeavors, but also in military endeavors, and also improving trade as well. But mapping of Alaska, the depths of the water, and he was a great cartographer, map maker. Yeah. So next we have Matthew Maury. So Matthew Maury, if I move this down here, Matthew Maury is really the first one to write a detailed book, or a textbook, you could say, on the physical geology or the physical geography of the sea. This textbook, or this like an encyclopedia that he wrote describing the ocean, and included much of the work that other people had already done, and compiled it into a book, and really is credited with the first one to do that. And he studied wind currents, and this was something that was so important, and really all these gentlemen were involved in that. But wind currents, because these were sailing ships. And we're going to learn in this class about the prevailing currents of the ocean, because they really do determine weather and so on. And these guys were really some of the first people that were interested in mapping these. And they came up with maps showing where they would be, what direction the wind would be, the prevailing winds. And this would be wind as well. And they would take things like temperatures of the water and so on, just make observations as they were going. So that's Matthew Maury. And then we have this guy here, I should put his first name in, Charles Wyville Thomson. And Charles Wyville Thomson was a really famous guy. He was probably the one that really moved the science exploration into a whole new level. And he was aboard a ship called Challenger. And if you remember, our space program has Challenger as well, and it's really named after his ship, the HMS Challenger. And he was just responsible for much scientific research. And he went on in 1872, fix that, and just took copious amounts of data, and he did ocean depths, no matter where they were, would take piano wire and attach certain things to it and just go really deep to see, make maps that were just really detailed about the topography of the ocean floor. So when captains were at their ship, they didn't have to worry about going aground. They knew the best places to travel, and he really had a big part in constructing those maps as well. He had even helped find the depth of the Mariana Trench, which is like 26,000 feet deep. Not sure about how in 1872 he was able to do it, but he was able to figure out how deep that trench was, which is just amazing. How many feet is that? It's like 4 miles almost, over 4 miles deep. Not sure exactly how he did it, but he discovered new species. He would collect samples of organisms as he was going along, and when they stopped in new lands, if they stopped in on an island out in the middle of the Pacific, they would collect species, put them in bottles, just trap them, and then they would take them back, and they would also look for organisms as they're sailing in the ocean and just take lots and lots of data. And his was solely really scientific based. It was really based on collecting scientific data. And he was probably one of the first to do that. And he helped discover many, many, many new species. Okay. So our last one we want to look at is Nansen. And this guy here is responsible for exploration of Arctic waters. And he had a ship named the Fram and did lots and lots of exploration and collection of data in the Arctic. And they would go and get stuck in the ice on purpose and just collect data while they were there. They would collect, along with many of these other guys as well, they would collect weather data. And ocean depths. Many people believed that the Arctic, these oceans up there, were really deep, and they found out they're not deep at all. They're rather shallow when you consider the rest of the ocean. And he would take water samples, just collect samples, take them back. They would analyze them once they got back. And these guys would go on long, long journeys and to collect data on science. It's kind of cool, kind of a cool thing. And I want to go back and show you, before we're done here, some of these pictures and some more information on Thompson and the HMS Challenger. So if I go to this here, this kind of shows you a picture. It's a sailing boat, a ship, and that's the HMS Challenger. And you can kind of see, here's a St. Paul's Rocks. Look here, some pictures of the ship. But here along the ship there's laboratories. It kind of shows you some of the things. There's a chemistry lab on this. So this is really all about science. There's this carbonic acid analysis. So they were looking for carbonic acid in the ocean water. Here's their water samplers that they used. Here is their bottom samplers. They drag this along the bottom and take samples as well, and discovered, this organism here, and they would draw pictures of them. They show some of these dinoflagellates over here. I just can't quite see them, but they would take people and just collect copious amounts of data. So if we go back here, so those are our notes on the scientific explorers, and our next notes are going to be even a little different than the first and second. These notes show you how the bent became much more on science and eventually moved completely towards that realm, not worrying so much about trade at all. But these are four very influential people. Nansen and the Fram, exploring Arctic waters. They would be stuck in the ice, but as they were there, they would take lots of data. Thompson, just really one of the first that did nothing but science, and then Maury, really the father of physical oceanography, just having a book that taught people about wind currents and just this data of the ocean. And then Cook was somebody we know. I include him because he's also involved in science, and somebody we know in Alaska, Captain Cook Hotel, and he was involved in mapping as well of Alaska and Hawaii, and actually the Hawaiians mistook him for a god and one of their gods, and eventually he was killed. So that's our notes. Hopefully you learned something. Make sure you annotate, and I will see you later.